not. Second one we're not going to keep. Good enough. You can stop. You just saw the car running around a few laps, and in this video I will be talking about all the physics that's involved on this racetrack. Later on in a later recording I will present you with measurements. I'm not going to measure things around here while I'm doing these videos. You can imagine that this loop here, that the diameter looks about a foot. In fact, it's 36 centimeters. But I'm going to do that outside of a recording. At some point you need the length of the track, and I will be measuring that, or the mass of the car, things like that. Anyway, I want to start out with velocity and acceleration. As you saw, the car is running around the track here, and because it's constantly changing directions, that's why it's better to talk about speed than about velocity, because velocity is speed with direction, and with the direction changing at all times, the velocity is changing at all times, so it's much easier to just talk about the speed here, which you will calculate really straightforward once I give you how long the track actually is, divided by the time that it takes the car to go around. And that time has actually been already measured respectively. You will do that with the first recording, where you count the number of laps and then you see how much time it took for those laps. That's how you come up with the average speed for the entire track. As the car goes through here, of course it has to accelerate, decelerate, because it has to make sure it's not going to fly out of a curve due to its inertia, or up here due to its inertia, just get out here, or out of this curve here. And then of course at some point here I actually have to accelerate it so that it makes it actually up through the loop. That kind of acceleration, I notice, kind of starts over here, so it takes this entire track here until it gets to about here to have sped up enough that it actually makes it through the loop, and then actually it needs to slow down, because otherwise due to its inertia it will get out of this curve. And again, I will supply you with the numbers, and you will calculate the acceleration that is needed to get it to its top speed. So here I'll be talking about the forces that act on the car, and of course gravity tries to pull the car down, so there needs to be a support force from the track itself, which is always perpendicular to the track that is holding the car up. I point that out that it's perpendicular to the track because on a banked curve like this one here, the support force is still perpendicular to the track. That'll become important later on. The car wouldn't go anywhere if it didn't have what could be called an engine force, or you could call it thrust or propulsion, and the car would just keep on going somewhere, even if that's turned off, if it wasn't for friction and air resistance. So there's also kinetic friction and air resistance that is holding it back. Those four forces combined will then give rise to an acceleration divided first by the mass of the car, and that acceleration then determines, well, if the car is gonna get faster or if the car is gonna get slower, or if it remains at the same speed. For example, if all the four forces cancel each other, then the acceleration is 0 and the speed is constant, and the car will just continue going at its original velocity, in this case velocity in a straight line, or it will just stand here. If there is a certain acceleration here in the same direction as the motion, then the car will get faster. If there is an acceleration in the opposite direction of the motion, then the car will get slower. If there is an acceleration perpendicular to the car, then it will become a centripetal acceleration and the car will change direction. And so a moment ago I talked about velocity for just a moment, so at this point again it's easier to talk about the speed. Of course, all these forces therefore enter into Newton's second law, with which the acceleration can be calculated. I want to talk about the car itself a little bit. You see that this is apparently Lightning McQueen. That's because I bought this racetrack for my sons. They're relatively little still, just entering grade school, and for them to have these cars that actually came with the kit, you know, they kind of fall apart, pieces are breaking once in a while. Fortunately, I'm able to glue them on most of the time. But of course they want to have Lightning McQueen, and because there are a couple of brothers, I couldn't get away with getting a Hornet Hudson and a Lightning McQueen, so I got two for those guys. And then, as you can see, I use this racetrack for my physics classes. Okay, I want to make something up, and that is a driver that's perhaps sitting inside here, a hypothetical driver. I mentioned a moment ago about acceleration and the forces involved. So what happens when there is no acceleration at all? So it's standing still here. What happens to that driver inside staying still here? Or it's moving at a constant speed. Well, exactly the same thing that happens to you when you're on the road, constant speed. You feel virtually nothing there because there's no change in acceleration. You don't feel a net force acting on you other than the vibrations that are on the road. But you can easily nap. Maybe not you the driver, but the passenger. But what happens when the car accelerates? Well, when the car accelerates, there needs to be a net force from the back, and that means that you're being pushed, or pushed in quotes, into the seat. Actually, it's the seat pushing you forward, overcoming your inertia. Inertia actually wants to hold you back, and so the seat needs to accelerate you forward. What happens when the car is slowing down? Well, your body is lunging forward. Same thing here with the hypothetical driver. He would be lunging forward because of his inertia, and the car itself is a net force backwards that is slowing the car down. In a curve where there needs to be a centripetal acceleration, a centripetal force changing the direction of the car, well, that person inside wants to continue on because of his inertia, and that's where we have that sensation of being pushed to the outside. Again, pushed in quotes. Actually, we are going to the outside because of our inertia, and then we feel the car door that is actually pushing us inside. If there was no car door right here, we'd be falling out. So fortunately there is, and of course we're buckled up as well, so that actually keeps us inside. So actually the force that we do feel is a force being pushing inwards that we therefore call a centripetal force, and it results in a centripetal acceleration when we divide by the mass of the car.